The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, and welcome to the Envision National Youth Leadership Forum on Law and CSI Post-Enrollment webinar. You will find this webinar most helpful if you have already enrolled your student in the Law and CSI program for the summer. My name is Danielle Thomas, and I am the Senior Program Manager with the Law and CSI program. I have been working with Envision programs since 2009 and have managed the Law and CSI program for over 6 years. I am so excited for another great summer. I'm also looking forward to sharing lots of information with you, as well as answering your questions tonight. First, we would like to welcome you and your student to the National Youth Leadership Forum on Law and CSI webinar. We cannot wait to meet your student and begin this wonderful summer adventure. A few housekeeping items to review before we begin. The webinar platform is equipped with a dashboard to the right of your screen. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type and submit them there. We will have a 25-minute content section, followed by a 15-minute Q&A based on the questions that we received throughout the webinar. We have Envision staff monitoring the dashboard. If a pertinent question arises, we will try and answer it right away. Otherwise, we will save all questions for the end. At the end of the webinar, there will also be a quick survey to let us know how helpful this was to you. Please be honest in your feedback so we can alter the webinars to better suit you and your scholars' needs. A tidbit of information before we get started. At Envision, we use the term scholar to refer to students. Okay, let's get started. In today's webinar, we will cover topics that we get the most questions about at this point in the process. If you have topics other than these that you would like to hear about, don't forget to use the dialog box to your right. Write us a note and we'll be sure to follow up. On today's agenda, we will be covering accessing your online information, safety and security, preparing for your program and schedule highlights, what happens after the webinar, and at the end, we'll open the floor to a Q&A by monitoring the question box to your right. Let's get started. First up, accessing your online information. MyEnvisionExperience.com. Go here. There's important stuff that you need to do and forms that you need to submit. You'll be taken to a page specific to your account. Click on the enrollment forms and info from the menu at the top of the page. This will load a page that lists all forms available to assist your scholar in preparing for the program. Several items listed on this page are required for attendance at Law and CSI and/or have deadlines that need to be met in order for us to process the information and have it on file when your scholar arrives on day one. Please pay close attention to the required items and the deadlines. Also to note, if you have more than one student enrolled, or if your student is an alum, you have the ability to toggle between your student accounts by clicking on the gray student tiles. The current account will have a light blue tile. Anytime you navigate to a new tab within your MyEnvisionExperience.com page, ensure you have the correct account selected before proceeding. Other helpful documents you will find on this page include information about travel, like the World Tech Official Travel Agency. World Tech is a travel agency that will provide flight options to help you coordinate your scholar's trip. There's also a section on preparing for your program, academic resources, policies and procedures, and a sample schedule. Let's take a moment to review the legend available at the bottom of the page. Here you'll find information on what each of the icons next to the forms mean. The stack of straight lines indicates an online form that will open on this page once you click the form. The chain icon indicates an embedded link that will open a new page with information or a new form for you to complete. The down arrow icon indicates a downloadable form or information sheets. The up arrow icon indicates a form that you must download, complete, and then upload using the Choose File button provided. The black dot indicates that a form or action is incomplete. And the green check mark indicates that you have completed the form or opened an informational document. Don't worry about completing all of these forms at once. You can always save and come back later. Required forms are listed at the top in the Required section. If there is a deadline for completing a form, it will be listed after the name of the form. Once you have completed a form, the deadline will disappear. Be sure to complete your forms by the deadlines. One last thing in the Required section. Included in this list is the Career Experience Selection Form. While all scholars will participate in the speaking events and site visits, they will spend the entire week with one focus area, either law or crime scene investigation. We will place the scholars in groups for either law or CSI based on this form. Please note the deadline to submit the form on your student portal. We have extended the deadline to June 11th, but please do not wait until that time. After that date, scholars will be randomly assigned to a track. We cannot honor preferences past the deadline, and scholars will be unable to switch groups, especially since we will be following a pod model. Please submit this form by the deadline so your scholar can participate in their desired experience. If you have already submitted the form and would like to change your selection, please call the Office of Admissions, whose phone number will be displayed toward the end of this webinar. We spent the last year examining our programs from every angle, and this section is going to walk through the new program framework we've put in place for 2021 in an effort to mitigate the risks to the health and safety of our scholars and staff. I want to share a little bit more about the background of the work that our Back to Travel Task Force was in charge of. This task force leverages decades of experience across our company to assess the safety of the destinations where we operate programs, stay abreast of openings and closings, understand new protocols and regulations from our partners, and create trainings and detailed safety plans to manage the risks associated with COVID-19. It's led by WorldStride's Chief Academic, Health, and Safety Office, and our Medical Director, Dr. Sika, who oversees our Doctors on Call team. We're committed to evaluating each program individually and carefully as we make intentional decisions to help keep all of our participants safe. We're taking into account the Center for Disease Control and World Health Organization guidelines, including staying up to date as new updates come out from each of them. We'll talk about the pre-program requirements, our COVID-19 advisory letter, the pod model structure, staff safety, what to expect on arrival day, and our communicable disease plan. All the documents we will showcase can be found in your scholar-specific account page. There are a number of pre-program requirements our participants will need to meet before joining us on arrival day. First, all participants are required to sign and upload the Envision by WorldStride's COVID-19 advisory letter, located on your MyEnvisionExperience.com page. The letter emphasizes the importance that all participants be aware of the symptoms related to COVID-19 and take responsibility for monitoring their health and reporting any symptoms before and during the program. This includes wearing a mask, maintaining appropriate physical distance, and following proper hygiene protocols. Second, all participants are required to submit a negative PCR test no later than 24 hours prior to the program start date. You will be required to upload this information to our EduHealth system. Instructions on how to access the system and upload the appropriate information will be added to your student page approximately 30 days prior to the program start date. We'll discuss more about the testing and what is a PCR test in our next slide. Envision scholars and staff will be required to bring their own personal protective equipment for all site visits. Scholars will be provided World Strides branded safety kits at the start of the program. Each safety kit will include disposable masks, hand sanitizer, sanitation wipes, a lanyard for mask storage, and a safety card with helpful tips. Furthermore, the registration process for both program arrival and departure will be digitized as much as possible in an effort to minimize contact. Staff and scholars should also remain mindful of signage when traveling from one space to another, referring to markers on the ground, and being respectful of PPE boundaries or barriers that may be placed around the housing site or venue. Envision will limit the number of desks permitted on site during and at registration. You can read more about the pre-program and registration requirements regarding health and safety on your MyEnvisionExperience.com page. Scholars will be asked a series of symptom check questions the day before and on the first day of the program and prior to arriving to registration. We ask that if you are not feeling well, that you stay home. Scholars will also complete daily symptom check questions each day of the program. This information will be collected digitally on our EduHealth system each day, and it is recommended that students 13 years and older bring a mobile device to submit the responses. Once you have completed these pre-program requirements, continue to check your scholar-specific account page for more information on preparing for arrival day. So what exactly is a PCR test? PCR stands for Polymerase Chain Reaction Test. The test detects the presence of a virus if you are infected at the time of the test. The test could also detect fragments of the virus even after you are no longer infected. It also detects the virus within days of infection, even in those who have no symptoms. It is considered the gold standard of COVID-19 detection. The test can be done in a clinic, hospital, or even in your car. Tests are sent to a lab and usually takes around 1 to 3 days to get the results back typically. Even if your scholar is vaccinated, a PCR test is still required. An antigen test, frequently referred to as a rapid test or non-PCR test, will not be accepted. If you'd like to learn more about testing, you can use the link provided on the slide from the Centers of Disease Control website. In your MyEnvisionExperience.com page, you will also see information regarding our pod model structure, implemented in order to help reduce possible risk of COVID exposure. Scholars will remain with this classroom pod for the duration of their time with us. This includes normal classroom group time, bus travel, rotations during scheduled events, as well as housing. Roommates will be assigned by pod, and scholars of the same pod will be on the same floor or section of the housing site. The exact pod size will differ, but will fall within the CDC recommendation of 11 to 20 students per pod. We do understand that there may be times during the program where scholars may come in contact with others outside of their pod, and it's in those instances especially that being masked and appropriately physically distanced will be important. Additionally, we will be enforcing staff health and safety protocols that include requirements to complete health and safety training directly related to mitigating the spread of COVID-19. Staff are also required to sign an advisory letter, get a PCR test done prior to the start of each session, wear personal protective equipment at all times, and finally, maintain and enforce the pod model with fidelity. Just as we have standard policies for on-site medical care in general, we have spent time working with our Doctors on Call team based at the George Washington Medical Center to build out a communicable disease policy. The execution of this policy is of course dependent upon the local guidance of officials and authorities, but we standardize our practices as much as possible. We built out very specific steps to take when someone starts exhibiting symptoms while they're at the program, as you can see on the slide. and then built upon that to build scenario guidance for related situations, quarantining students, getting students tested if necessary, how to respond to test results, and our communication plan to our partners and vendors. Our standards for responding to someone exhibiting symptoms are as follows. First, separate the staff or scholar from the roommate and program participants as soon as possible. Keep at least 6 feet of distance. Next, contact a medical professional, either a nurse on site or doctors on call, to check the symptoms. Be prepared with individuals' medical and travel history and any interactions with others who may have come in contact with them. We'll document that utilizing the scholar medical report. And lastly, evaluate the health of those who may have come in close contact. If the length of quarantine or isolation will exceed the length of the program, we will work with the families and guardians to determine if the scholar will isolate or quarantine at home. In the event that the family is unable to arrange transportation back home, we will work through options to determine the appropriate quarantine or isolation method. Once scholars arrive, their safety and security is the #1 priority. We will now go through a number of items to help answer any questions you may have. Scholars are led through the program and cared for in small groups by trained advisors. These staff members are experienced with students and have undergone extensive training and background checks. Many staff members are educators outside of the summer months and work year-round to provide safe and high-quality experiences for students. Our staff members will be required to sign the Envisioned by World Strides COVID-19 advisory letter, provide a negative COVID-19 PCR test prior to the program start, and undergo frequent testing throughout the program session, as well as complete a health and safety intensive training. During the first group meeting, scholars will take part in a briefing on the policies and procedures of the program. This will include information on who to contact in an emergency, attendance, off-site safety procedures, and venue safety protocols. They will also practice the emergency evacuation plan in their first small group meeting. Envision also has several safety processes in place that we teach scholars and ask them to adhere to throughout the program. All scholars and staff must wear their name badges anytime they are outside of their sleeping room, and staff conduct attendance at every group meeting and anytime they depart a location on the bus. This name badge will have emergency contact information printed on the back. Scholar and staff name badges will be equipped with a mask clip for easy, hygienic mask accessibility. Scholars are encouraged to travel with a buddy. Scholars will be transitioning to program events with the advisor or another staff member leading them. As we mentioned, the pod model structure will be based on roommate pods, and scholars will experience all program components with their roommate. Every evening, our scholars are dismissed to their sleeping rooms. Staff will conduct room checks nightly to ensure that all scholars are in their rooms for the night and distribute any important information for the next day's events. Once room checks are complete, scholars are not permitted to leave their rooms until breakfast the following morning. Attendance is taken several times throughout the day, including at meals, group meeting sessions, before, during, and after transitioning to a new event, and before bed. If there is a missing scholar, we have an emergency protocol to locate that scholar and return them to their group. Scholars will be taken to the emergency meeting location on the first day of the program, so they know where to go in case anything happens. At the Lawn CSI program, we have a student to staff ratio of 1 to 11, and the student to advisor ratio is approximately 1 to 20. Each classroom will have support staff members available to assist and distribute the needed materials for each lesson. We also have a team of scholar relations who support scholar needs in any way. If your scholar is feeling sick, homesick, or just needs something during the program, this team will assist them. We hire educators and individuals from all over the country to serve in these roles. Students will receive emergency telephone numbers for our staff, who will be monitoring the floors throughout the night. They can call this number at any time if they need assistance after room check. These numbers will be listed on the back of their name badge and will be accessible to them at all times. Staff will also be monitoring the halls to assist any scholars that may be there without a phone. When an incident occurs, our staff spring into action. We will contact you if an incident occurs with your scholar, whether it's behavioral or medical, and all incidents are recorded and reported to the program office. You will be involved and informed at every step. We consider an incident to be anything that occurs during the program which affects your scholar and is not prearranged per the itinerary. This includes medical issues, weather impacting the schedule, lost items, travel disruptions, etc. Incidents may originate on-site, or a parent may call our office with a concern. Our phones are managed 24/7. Every single incident is documented, and follow-up occurs in coordination with on-site staff to reach a solution. Additionally, we'll have daily health checks for scholars and staff to ensure that every participant at the program is not exhibiting signs or symptoms of an illness. A nurse will be on site every day of the program with the scholars during designated hours. During nighttime hours, there are designated support staff members to take care of reporting medical needs. As I mentioned before, scholars will have contact information to reach its support staff team members at all times of the day or night. Next, we'll transition into how to prepare for the program. In the required section, you will see the student information form and medical authorization and information. These forms are a good place to start to let us know what medical needs and/or dietary restrictions your scholar may have. Accommodations can be made for vegetarian, vegan, kosher, or even halal meals, as well as many food sensitivities and allergies, such as gluten, nuts, and dairy, as long as we are informed about the condition in advance. We'll work directly with our dining partners and can make these requests on your behalf. The Law and CSI program is a nut-free program. There are vending machines and gift shops on site at the hotel that will offer candies with nuts. Scholars are told not to purchase any of these items for the safety of all scholars and staff at the program. If you choose to send snacks with your scholar, send nut-free snacks. Given the nature of allergies of staff as well as scholars, a staff member will ask that all snacks containing or made with nut products be removed from sleeping rooms, classrooms, and any other program spaces. We do have a number of off-site visits where meals may be enjoyed off campus. A good rule of thumb is to bring enough spending money to purchase 2 to 3 off-site meals. Under the category Preparing for your program, you'll see the roommate request application. If there's someone attending the program that your scholar would like to room with, please submit the request using this online form. This will generate an email request to the other scholar's family, who can then accept or decline the request via the online system. Please note that this form can only be used for double roommate requests. Any requests beyond that must be made through our Office of Admissions. If you have any questions or concerns, please reach out to our Office of Admissions to clarify, whose contact information that we will display at the end of this webinar. The Law and CSI program enjoys an excellent reputation in our communities as a result of our prestigious students. To ensure that this is maintained, all of our scholars are expected to maintain a high standard of appearance. The dress code for this program consists of professional attire, relaxed professional attire, and casual attire prepared with comfortable shoes. We also have a semi-formal closing celebration at the end of each session, where we will encourage scholars to wear either semi-formal or professional clothing. Please take some time to review the dress code in detail to ensure that your scholar is prepared with the proper and enough clothing. The number of outfits your scholar should pack for each type of attire is listed in this slide. Definitions of each type of attire, including how many outfits to bring per type of attire, can be found on your dress code, planning, and travel checklist found on your MyEnvisionExperience.com page. It is important to note that masks are part of the dress code and should be worn anytime a scholar is outside of their sleeping room. Any masks or clothing with offensive or inappropriate designs or stamps will not be allowed at the program. Envision is committed to providing a safe and inclusive experience for all scholars and staff, with an environment that values each participant and encourages the exchange of diverse ideas, skills, and contributions. In order to cultivate and maintain this environment, Envision defines and teaches the expectations we want to see. These 4 positively stated, easy to remember expectations align with creating the culture that we want to see at our programs. The expectations are known as the 4 Bs. They include be respectful, be responsible, be safe, and be engaged. It's important that you and your scholar understand these expectations and are committed to upholding Envision's program culture while attending the program. The Envision Way. The Lawn CSI program is made up of a 3-tier curricular approach to experiential learning: Academy, Lab, and Arena. The combination of these events contribute to a holistic experience that will build your scholar's leadership skills, promote career experience, and provide collaboration with like-minded peers. Academy sessions will feature curriculum that hones in on new and developing skills. Lab sessions will give scholars a chance to use their critical thinking and creative skills to work their way through dynamic simulations. And lastly, in the arena, scholars will get the opportunity to present the results of their hard work on a platform in front of their peers. We'll dive a little deeper into these events and components in the next slide. Let's highlight some of the curricular and cultural components that your scholar will experience at the program. The Law and CSI program takes place entirely in the Washington, D.C. area. Scholars and staff will reside at the beautiful Westfields Marriott Hotel, located in Chantilly, Virginia, about 30 minutes outside of the city. Our simulations and seminars are designed to enhance scholar knowledge in a specified area of content. These meetings provide an opportunity to examine leadership or career-specific roles by exchanging ideas, overcoming challenges, and pushing innovations. For the law scholars, they will recreate an actual Supreme Court case and argue either for or against the Fourth Amendment. For our CSI scholars, they will role play as detectives, sketch artists, and profilers to assemble a case file on a perpetrator. All scholars will participate in the culminating simulation from crime scene to trial, where they will understand the role that evidence plays in a trial. Along with these hands-on activities and challenges, scholars will also have the opportunity to hear from industry professionals during the speaker sessions. At the end of each session, scholars will be given the opportunity to ask the speakers questions. There will also be an evening of seminars where scholars can learn about different career fields available in their area of interest directly from professionals in that field. We'll have several speaking events during the program, including John Douglas, who is the founder of the Behavioral Analysis Unit of the FBI and author of the book Mindhunter. Finally, program site visits give scholars an opportunity to explore their interests outside of the program housing site. They're meant to help get them more engaged, intellectually curious, and both goal and career focused. Law students will hear from law school professionals and courthouse representatives. CSI students will hear from a panel of forensic and collegiate scientists. All scholars will visit George Mason University to get a taste of college life and learn about the admissions process. Scholars will also visit various sites in Washington, D.C., including the U.S. Capitol, Smithsonian museums, and national monuments. Now that you've heard all of the amazing things the scholars will be enjoying, we want to highlight the ways that you can be part of the excitement. We will be hosting a family program for the first time ever during our third session from July 25th through the 30th. This program will run alongside the student program and will provide family members with a crash course on how to get yourself and your scholar ready for college. This will be accomplished with a self-guided tour of Georgetown University, guided tour of George Mason University, and exclusive workshops with college admissions officers. Family members will also visit the sights and sounds of Washington, D.C., while being led by licensed tour guides. Finally, the families will be able to attend 2 speaking events alongside the students, including the John Douglas Plenary, and be able to view a portion of a student simulation. Registration is still open if you and your family would like to have an awesome experience alongside your child. If you are dropping your scholar off at the hotel on arrival day, we will be hosting a family orientation session on 3 times. We will have a cap on the attendees for each session, but if you do attend, you will meet our senior staff, hear a more in-depth synopsis of the program, and be able to ask questions with immediate feedback. If you are not able to attend the family orientation, there will be a recorded version available on your MyEnvisionExperience.com page closer to the program start date. And lastly, if you are picking up your scholar on departure day, you are welcome to join the commencement ceremony with a video presentation and selected students recapping their experience at the program. Attendance will be capped and seats will be first come, first serve. While your scholar is away at their Envision by World Strides program, we are sure you will be excited to see photos of what they're doing. Envision partners with Waldo Photos to share our program photos. You can view these photos by going to waldo.com/galleries and use the join code Envision21, which is not case sensitive. Select your scholar's program album, then select the program location and dates. Waldo Photos allows you to download photos, buy prints, share them on Facebook, and save them as favorites for later viewing in your Waldo account. Like what you see on the screen? Interested in purchasing some Envision gear? Check out the Envision Scholar Shop at shop.envisionexperience.com. So before we wrap up with the content portion, we want to look ahead and see what's next. Here are a few reminders to ensure that your scholar gets off to a successful start in this summer's Law & CSI program. First, book travel to and from the session location and complete the mandatory travel form. Secondly, make sure to complete all forms that are required on your MyEnvisionExperience.com page. Complete your career selection experience form on your MyEnvisionExperience.com page as soon as possible. This is essential if your scholar would like to choose whether they have a legal or crime scene investigation experience. Sign the COVID-19 advisory letter. Schedule your COVID test no earlier than 2 to 3 days prior to your program start date. Complete the pre-program assignments and be ready to embark on the adventure of a lifetime. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. If you need to speak with someone about anything we talked about today or for any other reason, please reach out to our Office of Admissions, whose contact information is listed on this slide. Now we'll turn our attention to the questions that have been asked throughout the webinar in the dialog box. If we do not get to your questions today, we'll be sure to follow up with an answer as soon as we can. As I turn to the dialog box, I see there have been some questions about the day on Capitol Hill that the students will be experiencing. So on Capitol Hill, they will be able to do self-guided tours of either the U.S. Capitol or the U.S. Supreme Court or the Library of Congress, if all of those places are open at the time of the program and if they are still allowing visitors to be able to go in. So We are still hoping that the scholars will be able to go to one of those 3 places or all 3. It's really up to them. We'll have staff posted at each of those locations to help them out. But as we know, things have been reopening slowly, and even as there are capacities at some of these locations. So we're hoping that things will open up by the time the program runs in July. But normally they would be able to go to either of those 3 places and have self-guided tours while they're there. I'm still catching up on the chat, so let me see if I can answer any other questions. There's some questions here about if the students can purchase college credits by George Mason University. Yes, you can. This program is credit bearing. You can find that information on mindvisionexperience.com page, or if you have any troubles with that, feel free to reach out to the Office of Admissions and they can help you through that process as well. We've had some people ask questions about if the scholar is vaccinated and that they need to bring a copy of their vaccination card. It's not required for students at the program to bring that record. However, a good practice is like we recommend for students that are coming from overseas and just to bring their passport in case they need it. So if they do have that item, that's great if they want to bring it in case they do need it, but it is not required for attendance at the program. However, we do make sure that they are submitting that negative PCR test. Couple of questions about the social experience that the scholars will have given the pod model. So I said before, the scholars will be in a pod of around 20 scholars. They will be with their roommate. So whoever they are rooming with is also the person who will be in their group and also in their same track. They will have lots of interaction with the other 20 people within their group. We do have some simulations where we do require both the law and the CSI tracks to come together and really see how each of those disciplines will interplay. When we're doing so, we're making sure that it's happening in the safest way possible. So we are ensuring that if we do have 2 separate pods coming together, they're coming together in a large enough room with lots of space for everyone to be physically distanced. Everyone is wearing masks, and we're doing so in a very safe space. We do know we want people to be networking, and we really encourage them to meet other people. However, with this pod model, we are trying to limit the amount of exposure to other people outside of their pod. So even though it does sound small, 20 people is still a lot of people that they'll be interacting with, as well as different social times when they are out on their own and site visits. We encourage them to be with a buddy, and hopefully it's with that roommate. However, if they are in the open air and they do see other people in the program, as long as they're physically distanced and still wearing that PPE, that can still occur. But we are really trying to make sure that we are limiting the exposure of one scholar to others, just in case someone else does get sick. We really don't want that to ruin or interrupt your scholar's experience either. A couple of questions here about when the final schedule will be available. So usually the final schedule is available, I want to say 5 business days prior to your program start date. However, the sample schedule that is up on your mindvisionexperience.com page is very, very similar to what the final schedule will be. So there shouldn't be too much of a change. We just might fill in some of the blanks in terms of some of the actual speakers for the events. But the construct of that program schedule, your draft schedule, is very similar to what your final schedule will look like. But I would say check about a week out before your program start date, and you should have that final schedule uploaded. A couple other questions about the number of scholars that are expected to be at the program per session, which is a great question. We're very happy to say that the Lawn CSI program is very popular this year, and we're so excited to welcome all of these scholars to the program and impart all this knowledge and great experiences to them. We are looking at approximately between 300 to 350 scholars per session. And with that, we are also making sure that we have appropriate amount of space for each of those pods. We're looking at enough spacing on the buses so people can physically distance as needed. And we're also working with our site visits on capacities and rotations to make sure that everyone still gets that same experience, but we're doing so in the safest way possible, even given that large group size. Thank you again for all the questions. Please keep them coming. We want to make sure that we're answering as many questions that you and your scholars have before the program so we can keep you as informed as possible and make sure that you all have all the information and are up to date on everything. Great, so there's some questions about people that are coming to the program via airport, what that experience will look like, and some of the wait times at the airport. So the airport that we'll be using for the Law and CSI program is the Dulles International Airport. The airport code is IAD. It is approximately 15 minutes away from the hotel. So it is not a very long trip from the hotel to the airport. We do have multiple shuttles that will be making loops around from the airport to the hotel. There could be delayed waiting times. It really depends on when your scholar is arriving at the airport and how many other scholars are also waiting to get on that same shuttle. However, we'll have staff that will be there. We have some activities that we'll be playing with the staff, with the scholars, encouraging them to introduce themselves to others in a very safe and physically distanced way. And we also encourage that time if they haven't had anything to eat, if they'd like to get a snack, or if they would like to take that time to call you all and let you know that they have made it safely. But usually the wait times are no longer than an hour, and quickly they'll be able to come right to that site. We'll be prepared for them. We'll have all of their information needed to run them through registration. And so we do ask if they want to bring a book with them, if they want to bring some snacks during that downtime, depending on when they arrive and when the shuttle is there, they're welcome to do so. And the same for departure day. We will have all of the shuttles leaving the site at approximately 10 and 10:30. And that is because we want all of the scholars to be there in enough time to get through security and make sure they get to their gate at least 2 hours before their departure time. So that is really when we see more of a wait time. So that is when we will encourage them to bring some summer homework if they need it, or any books or magazines. And they also sometimes just take that time to get some food, rest, or wait with some of their friends before it's time to get to their gate. But we will have staff members there. They will be wearing our Envision polos, and we have lots of signage. So please make sure if your scholar is arriving by airplane that they pick up their baggage and their luggage prior to meeting our staff. Any questions on the airport location and the registration travel windows, both arrival and departure day, can be found on the housing, registration, and travel form, which is on my envisionexperience.com page. It also has information about the housing site, parking, if you are driving your student there as well too. So we really will plug that form. It has pretty much all the information that you would need to know. We'll check again just to see if there are any other questions that we can answer for everyone during this time. Any final questions that you all would like to submit that we can answer while we have this time together? Okay, I see a couple about they missed their deadline for some of our required forms. That's completely fine. If that form is still available online, you can go ahead and still fill that out. It's still available for you. If you have any questions on that, or if it is a form where it no longer allows you to input any of your information, just go ahead and contact our Office of Admissions. We can make sure that we're either capturing that information for you or that we can open that form again so you have time to do that. And I see a question about the capacity on the buses. So right now, with our pod model of 20 scholars to one advisor, we are looking at around 2 advisor groups on one bus. So that is around 40 scholars that would be on a bus at a time. Most of our buses can hold anywhere from 53 to 60 people. So that still gives plenty of space for the scholars to spread out, be with their roommate, but also make sure that they're socially distanced from each other. And we'll also make sure that those 2 advisor pods will be separated. So we have worked out lots and lots of different plans for how we are going to maintain safety, both on-site as well as in the buses. But we will make sure that that there is enough seating, adequate seating capacity on the buses as well too. A couple questions on spending money recommendations. So at Envision, we do say we will provide scholars with 2 meals a day. Most of the lunches for the Law and CSI program are on own. So that's usually when we're going to be somewhere in Washington, D.C. area. So a good rule of thumb is to have spending money for 1 meal a day of the program. And we'll make sure that breakfast and dinner are provided for the scholars. And there also is a gift shop on site and other places when we're in DC if scholars would like to purchase snacks or would like to buy snacks on their own just to keep it in their rooms. Question around dress code and pajamas. So we do not have a dress code for pajamas. Please make sure your scholar is bringing pajamas, and we just encourage them to be appropriate, also knowing that they'll be sharing a room with another scholar of around the same age, just making sure that they have pajamas that they feel comfortable in, but that it is also appropriate for the type of professional conference that we are trying to adhere to and maintain. On the self-guided tours, I see a couple of questions on what that means and where staff are. So because it's a high school program, we do try to give scholars what we call supervised freedom. So when we say, for example, that the scholars will be doing self-guided tours on the U.S. Capitol, we will give the scholars what is called a briefing sheet. There's information about the boundaries that they are to stay within. It lets them know some eateries around that area if they're getting lunch, and it also lets them know exactly where the staff are posted. So we always have staff posted at a central location. So in case a scholar loses their buddy or just has any questions, they can always go to that central location and find the staff member there. And they also have the numbers in the back of their name badge. So in case they are unable to find our staff or they don't know exactly where they are, they can call the number on the back of their name badge. And no matter what number they call, we'll always have someone available to answer that, walk them through where they are, and help them to find a staff member to connect with them. So we do like to encourage independence for these high school students and a lot of time management. And we do tell them the time to be back. We rarely see people who have abused that or get there too late. If anything, we really see people who maybe sleep in on the first day because they're just not used to setting an alarm. But when they're out and about, we do have very tight guidelines on where they are able to go and where they're not able to go, and where our staff will be posted to find them at any time. If we have any families here that are also enrolled in our CSI extension program, it will be in a different location than the actual hotel for the core program. And that information will be put on your mynvisionexperience.com page shortly. We'll also be hosting a webinar specific for that extension later this month as well too. I'll look and see if there's any last questions before we wrap up. Okay, great. I think that was one of the last few questions that we saw coming in. We will stay here on the line and answer any other questions that might be coming through in the chat, but we'll go ahead and end the presentation part of the webinar. Again, thank you so much for your time today. We're so excited to meet you and your scholar this summer. We've been preparing for so long, and we're excited to give them this experience. If you have any other questions that we can't answer today, please feel free to reach out to the Office of Admissions, and we look forward to seeing you and your scholar soon. Thank you so much.